Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today is another milestone for us in this journey. Today is day 20 of 100 days of DevOps. So every 10 days we call it a milestone, and today is another 10 days after the first milestone. So today is day 20 of 100 days of DevOps, and we are going to continue with YAML basics. We started YAML basics yesterday, where we talked about the structure of YAML, and I made mention that basically every YAML file contains three basic things, which are the key value pairs, the list, and the object. So if you've not seen that video, you can go to day 19. This is the video here. You go to day 19 and you can watch the video, you practice, you add to your knowledge. If you're coming across this channel for the first time, so we talk about everything DevOps, cloud, and tech as a whole. And we are doing a 100 days challenge to cover every fundamentals or every foundation that has to do with DevOps, and then from there we take it one step at a time. So we started with the Linux, where we understood file systems, commands, processes, and the likes. Then we moved a step higher to networking, and after networking we moved to version control, where we talked about Git, GitHub, and the likes. And then we are currently considering another important and very, very fundamental thing in DevOps, which is YAML basics. Like yesterday, I explained that YAML is something that is non-negotiable. As a DevOps engineer, most of the tools you're going to be working with are written in YAML. They make use of YAML. So YAML is something that you really have to be good with. So I dedicated 2 days for it. It was yesterday, day 19. And I'll be rounding up on that today. So without wasting more time, we are going to go into what we have for the day. So today, consider anchors and aliases, environmental variables, placeholders, and templating, and as well as nesting. So after this, we'll wrap up our study on YAML basics. So I'm not going to waste any time. We'll go straight to my VS Code and start doing stuff. So first, this is what we did yesterday. So first, we're going to start with anchors and aliases. Basically, what are anchors and aliases? Anchors and aliases, it just help you reuse, blocks of code without rewriting them. It's just it's similar to creating a function in your, if you're doing Python, if you even in bash scripting, basically a function helps us, reuse blocks of code. So any code that you are going to be using frequently in your what I call it, file, you just create a function for it so that you don't have to retype them all the time. So basically, YAML has its own provision for that, which are anchors and aliases. So if you're familiar with any programming language like Python and the likes, you would know the importance of having a function or having a reusable block of code. So I'm going to go straight to the terminal and I'm going to show you how to go about it. So let's create a new file. We can say, let's create a pod, Kubernetes pod document. It's a pod.yaml. So how do you identify an anchor and an alias? Usually anchors are represented with the symbol and, while aliases are represented with the star symbol. So basically this is what you use to know an anchor and an alias. So I'm just going to write a simple pod YAML file and explain it to you. So let's leave this, let's say, common environment. So we want to write an environmental file. So use and. Okay, so it's already bringing the suggestion. So I will just type it. So basically, you are creating an environmental variables. Let's say your environment is the name of the environment is production. The log level is info. So you can see that this is actually a list. This is actually another list. So it just further solidifies my point yesterday that all the structure of YAML are basically just key value pairs, list, an object. So it's as simple as that. This is actually a key value pair. Yes. So now this is similar to creating a function in your programming language. So how do I use this? So let's create a pod and see how we are going to apply it. So let's see API version. So create a pod and let's see, name app1. So if you don't really understand what I'm doing, when we start studying container orchestration, you would understand all that I'm typing. But I'm just using this to further strengthen the point I'm trying to make. So let's give it a name. So let's give it an image. Let's say nginx image nginx. So we want to create an environmental variable for this particular pod. So you can see I can just do star and default environment. So basically what I've done here is that instead of writing all of this as an environmental variable in this pod file, I can just call it. So I'm calling, this is what you call the default you can name this anything. You can actually name it anything. So whatever you choose to name it is what you are going to call. So now I'm calling this default env, but you can see that here it's an and is before the default env, and here you can see a star before the default env. You use the and to, like, the and is an anchor, so it's basically what you use to name your, in quote, I'm going to relate it to function. So it's what you use to name your function in your other programming language. Why, when you want to call that particular function, you use a star. So this is and this is like an alias. So basically they work hand in hand because they do the same work. This creates the block of code, this uses it. So basically that is all about anchors and aliases. So it helps us create and reuse blocks of code that instead of having to type all of them all over again, I can, if I'm not going to use this, I'll just come down and start saying something like named, then environment, and all of that. I'll have to start putting all the whole this in there. But instead of doing this, it's better to just use the anchor and alias. So it makes your code simpler, it makes your code more readable, and it's just best practice basically. So that's that about anchors and aliases. It prevents us from duplicating things, you understand. So I'm going to move to the next, which is environmental variables. That's self-explanatory. So I also talked about environmental variables when we were considering shell scripts, and I explained the importance of having an environmental variable, in the sense that if you have something that instead of repeating, basically all of this is just trying to reduce the need to repeat things. In DevOps, we want to do automation with less repetitions. So basically, all of this is just in a bid to reduce repetition. The anchors and aliases, the environmental variable, the placeholders, and all of that is basically just in a bid to reduce repetition in our code. So now, when we talk about environmental variable, YAML does not really, or will I say exactly, explicitly execute environmental variable. So what happens is that depending on the tool you are working with, will determine the way you're going to structure your environmental variable. The way you will structure your environmental variable in Docker Compose is not the same way you will do that for GitHub Actions or GitLab CI. It's not the same way you're going to structure it for Kubernetes manifest. So I'm just going to use one that is actually simple and straightforward. So we're going to write a Docker Compose file, and we're going to pass in environmental variable. And the first thing is to create a .env file. Like I explained, it's actually good to let me just write it. Let me just create the file here. Let me create the file. So the first thing is to create your .env file, and I explained why the whole concept of a dot before the env and all of that. So if you missed the video on shell scripting, you can always go back to rewatch it, and I explained very, very explicitly on what the dot means and all of that. So let's create let's say we're working with a database now, a MySQL database. So basically, you don't want to put your password, your username, your API keys, your tokens. You don't want to hard code them in your code base or in whatever script you're writing. You want to create an environmental variable for it. So we're going to create an environmental variable for MySQL user and password. So let's do MySQL user. This is for Docker Compose. So for other tools, it might be a bit different. So MySQL user, let's say admin, and MySQL password. So we want to create a username and password. So we do equals to super secret. So we have an environmental variable. We created the username for our MySQL database, and we created a password for our MySQL database also, and we named them admin and super secret. So how do we pass this into our Docker Compose YAML file? So let's create let's just say compose.yaml and so when I click on enter, so it's already giving me, you can see that the sign has changed. It recognizes that it's a Docker Compose file. Like I said, you have to install some extensions. So when you install these extensions, your IDE will be able to know exactly what you're doing and to be able to assist. So let's write a Docker Compose YAML file, a simple one. So let's say services, what service? We're saying our database. We name our service DB, and it's already giving me suggestions. So you can see, even without typing it by myself, you can see, let me delete this. Yes. So you can see this. I'm using, because my IDE is actually smart. From my environmental variable, it has seen that I'm actually trying to create a MySQL database. So it already created it it already wrote the file for me. So you can see the image, MySQL latest, environmental variable. So this is how you pass your environmental variable. You put a $, open curly brackets or curly braces, you put your environmental variable. So you can see, instead of writing admin, you use MySQL user. And then instead of writing password, instead of writing super secret, you use MySQL password. So what it does is that with this Docker Compose will go to your environmental variable and pick this information from it. So that is how you specify environmental variable in Docker Compose. It's a bit different for GitHub Actions and all of that. So when we work with all these tools, then I'll be able to explain things better. I'm just trying to give like a general overview, and just really say some things that are really foundational and fundamental for you to understand if you're going into DevOps. So that's that about environmental variables. So let's move to the next: placeholders and templating. Basically, placeholders and templating is kind of different. It is advanced. It just helps us. It also tries to mitigate the it mitigates against us repeating code. Like I said, that it's basically just trying to avoid repetitions. And the same way with environmental variables, different tools have how they use placeholders and templating. For example, Ansible uses Jinja 2 for templating. Helm uses Go for templating, and GitHub Actions also the way it works is different. So I'm just going to pick one. I'll pick Ansible. So how do you use that? So we still have to create a variable, like an environmental variable file for that. So let's go and create an environmental variable. Let's say vars.yaml. So basically, let's put something here. So we're trying to install a package using Ansible, but we don't want to explicitly specify the name of the package. So we're just going to create a variable. We want to install Nginx. We want to install Nginx using Ansible, but we don't want to explicitly write that we want to install Nginx. We want to be able to change from the environmental variable file without having to go to our main code and make the changes. So let's create an Ansible playbook. Let's see, can name it nginx.yaml. So want to write an Ansible playbook to install an Nginx image. So let's do the name of our playbook, install Nginx, hosts. So if you notice that most of what I've been doing since is just basically list, key value pairs, object. That's what we're just combining in different ways just to achieve what we want to do. So we want to install it on, let's say we have a bunch of web servers. If you don't understand a lot of things I'm saying now when I'm talking about YAML, Docker Compose, Ansible, when we get to those particular parts, you'll be able to understand better. What I'm trying to just achieve or do is to prepare your mind down. I just feel like it's something I need to actually cover, something I need to touch, so that when we get to those, when we start covering them in details, it's not going to be entirely new or entirely fresh to you again. So task, and so you can see that the same thing, my IDE already went to the variable.yaml and has picked the web package. So instead of writing Nginx, it's picked the web package. It's just the same thing basically. So yes, ensures Nginx is, so the name of the package is, it's showing web package, but the actual thing we want to install is Nginx. So that's what placeholders are. So this is how you use a placeholder in Ansible. You use, for Docker Compose, it's one curly brace and a $sign in front of it. For Ansible, it's two curly braces, the name of the package, and then you put it in a quote. So that's how to actually use placeholders and templating in Ansible. So it's different for Helm, it's different for GitHub Actions, but this is just like a general overview of what templating and placeholders actually do. They all do the same thing. They all try to reduce repetition, make your code more secure, because these are things that some things should not actually be put out to the public, like your API keys, your passwords, all of them. So these tools are just here to help you or help your work more secure and your code more readable. So that's just it. Then finally, I'm going to talk about nesting. Nesting is something that it's simple, but I just feel I should talk about it. So basically, it's just, the whole concept of nesting is when you write, most of the things I've been writing since are just simple code. Everything is just simple and simple and simple and all of that. So it gets to a point where your code will become complex, where you have blocks of code inside blocks of code. So if you are familiar with programming languages, this is something that you already know. So it's just like having several blocks of code inside each other. So an example of that is going to be, let me look for the deployment YAML file we used yesterday is an example of nesting. So let me go and get that. Let me say deployment. So let's pick this up and I'll explain nesting to you. So let me create a new file. Let me say deployment.yaml. Let me paste this. So now, I explained this yesterday. This is a key value pair, and all of these objects and that and that and that. Now, this is different from pods. When you see pods, it's just API key, kind, metadata, spec, and then you have this. But now you have API key, kind, metadata, spec, and in spec you have replicas, selectors, match labels, template. Now template is under spec. Now where you have all this is under template. So basically it's like putting blocks of code inside each other. Like, see, you have one spec here, you have another spec here. So it's like having spec inside of spec. So basically it's just having blocks of code inside each other. That is just the whole concept of nesting. So I think I've been able to I don't want to load us too much with information because I'm already beginning to mention tools that a lot of us that are new to DevOps are not really familiar with. But I just needed to prepare our mind down because we are going to be done with the foundationals tomorrow, which is day 21, and I think I'll just quickly touch on Python for DevOps. So after that, then we start doing some things. We start moving to container orchestration, containerization, and the rest. So where we actually do core DevOps stuff. So by the time we start doing all of that, all these things will not really be new to you again. To just be like a refresher, and I'll be able to explain better because the purpose of this video is not actually to explain the tools. It's just to show you how to write or how YAML files are being written. So that said, that will be all from me today. We've been able to cover everything about YAML. We started yesterday. We covered the building blocks, the functional building blocks of YAML. And then today we covered some advanced concepts. And tomorrow we're going to round up on the core foundationals. So we started, let me go up here. We started with Linux, went to scripting, we talked about networking, Git, and we've done YAML. So we're just going to conclude on Python scripting tomorrow, which is day 21. So if you're seeing this video and you really is something that you actually, are interested in following the journey, or somebody that you would want to, start learning one or two things about DevOps, you can do well to share this video with them. You can also subscribe, and most importantly, turn on the notification bell so that whenever I post new videos, you get it immediately and you're able to learn something or add to the knowledge that you have. And with more practice, I'm very sure that most of these things that we've been covering so far will become a piece of cake for you. So I'll see you tomorrow again. Cheers.